This is the Impressions Exchange Podcast. Where all topics impacting the graphic imaging and printing industry are addressed via in-depth news coverage, analysis, and timely interviews.
Welcome to another episode of the Impressions Exchange Podcast. I'm Ashley Roberts, Content Director of Printing Impressions and the host of today's episode. Today, I'm joined by a globally recognized marketing leader with more than 30 years of experience. Josh Golden is currently the Chief Marketing Officer of Quad, and he was previously President and Publisher of Ad Age. He also worked at Xerox, as well as several top marketing and advertising agencies. While a conversation with Josh would be exciting in and of itself, today we're diving into a fun and very timely research report. The Harris Poll's The Return of Touch Holiday Shopping Reconnected, presented by Quad. We get into some of the most surprising results shared in the report, how Quad aligns its strategies with some of the findings, and what other print service providers, print buyers, and marketers can take away from the data. Stay tuned for our conversation. Hi, Josh. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Ashley. Thrilled to be here to chat with you.
Yes, I'm thrilled to have you. And I'm especially thrilled because of what we're going to be talking about today, which is the return of touch research. So I'd love to maybe just start off by telling the audience, What is this report?
So it came out of a conversation I was having. I'm always trying to measure, as a marketer, I'm of course always trying to measure and quantify the reasons why we do something. And I know in my early days of marketing, I knew all these things to be true. I just never could quantify it. So when I started my job here at Quad, which is heavily, with a strong history in manufacturing, now moving into the agency space and creative and digital spaces, it still made me have this question, which was, what is actually the physical value of engaging with something tangibly? And that question prompted me. I had a conversation with a gentleman whose name was John Gersma, who was a genius at the Harris Poll, because I wanted it to not come from Quad. I wanted it to come from a verifiable research institution. And I mentioned it to John, this idea I had, and he's like, "Oh, you want to do you get a metric like the return of touch?" And I was like, "That is it, John Gersma. That is what I want."
That. Mm-hmm. I love it.
And so we did this research, and we've now done it. We do the primary research, then we did another pulse specifically for the holiday season, just to sort of understand what does the value of touch bring to the holiday, push. And we sent it out so people could physically engage with it and touch it as they're looking at they're reading the research. But it's different when you're touching and turning the page and saying, "Oh, I wanted to see is there a difference in the people we send this to, our clients and our partners in the media space? Like, do you get this?" So that research I believe it has such a value for us to communicate it, because of course, as a Quad makes a tremendous amount of printed materials, but also it really does help brands and marketers understand how this medium is so critical for them to engage with their consumer.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you touched on the tangible aspect of this,
right,
and the value here. So maybe let's talk about that. What is the value for brands and marketers seeing this information brought to light?
Well, I think it's that the value, of course, is that we have this data that suggests when you can understand when you walk into a store, you're 86% more likely to buy something if you touch it. That is, of course, we all knew it to be true. It's not like, "Oh my God, that's so amazing. I didn't no idea." No, of course we knew, yes, you go and you touch a sweater, you're like, "Oh, I love that feels. I'm actually going to buy that." If you don't touch it, it doesn't mean you're not buying it. It's not necessarily, it doesn't engage. Now it's really hard and I think this is the point of one of the bigger points of the research. It's really hard when you're looking at a glass screen, and it's temporal. You're flying by things. You're not even, I was talking to someone last week about this moment. Like when I engage with the movie like E.T., I remember the movie. I remember how I felt. I remember the movie theater I saw it in. I remember all these fascinating pieces because it was an experience that happened in a place and a moment of my life. If you asked me what was the hysterical thing that I was laughing on Instagram yesterday that I sent to my wife, I'm like, I don't remember. I don't remember it at all, because I've lost the ability to, I think, to have a moment that was physical,
Mhm.
the opportunities that are real and engaging, like going to the Taylor Swift concert is a physical. Yes, of course you could watch it on television, but it's not the same feeling. This is the point of the research and the reason why we wanted to quantify it, so that everyone had the benefit of actually having data points to support all the different ways that brand marketers could reach consumers.
Right. I think part of it is also just from, my perspective on the outside looking in,
Yes.
um, there's such a barrage of digital content. I mean,
Yes, of
on any
course.
given night, you can watch 15 movies on Netflix and see 1,000 videos on your phone. Whereas, if you're receiving something in the mail, it's that, it's got your attention, as you said, and you're
Yeah.
actually spending some time with it versus 1,000 different things coming at you from all different screens. I think that's a really great point.
And I think, just to expound on that just slightly, it makes a tremendous quantity of sense that our younger, the Gen Z audience, they are feeling this moment of, you know what? I think I might have had enough with my phone for a little bit. And listen, when I read the research, I was pretty convinced that that baby boomers and the Gen Xers were going to be like, we love print and printed materials. But it turns out that this younger audience is passionate about receiving things in the house. As a matter of fact, a lot of the Gen Z audience wants more content to receive at the house because I think it's exciting and real. And I think that we've seen in the research in particular that this moment of a pendulum swinging from, specifically pandemic based, like we were all in our houses and sort of, stifled. And then now everyone wants this sort of revenge, get out there and do things. So this moment of digital detox is prevalent and it is consistent. And I'm seeing it with my children. We mentioned in our last conversation, both of our children, I have a 16 and an 18-year-old, and they are endlessly exploring putting the phone down or in another room. And that detox gives them the ability, like, we do this cooking, every now and then. It requires both hands. And when you make dinner together, you're talking, but you're also, it's not on your phone. I know that it's hard to convince a young person that they can live without it, but like, you can live without it.
Right.
And then now people are actually creating spaces that are sort of phone not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
It is inspiring to think that the younger people will want to move in that direction, because I think the pendulum has swung so far that it's potentially damaging.
Right. And so the report said 81% of Gen Z report wishing that it was easier to disconnect from digital devices. And so from your perspective, what does this high number suggest about mindset and opportunity for brands to capitalize on that?
My instinct, there was the 81% metric also made me, fall on the floor. I was like, wow, 81%. Wished it was easier. The way we framed the question, they wished it was easier. I'm like, well, it is really easy. You just put the phone down. Now, we as Gen Xers and, or me at least, I have zero issue leaving my phone downstairs to go to sleep. I know that seems like, I don't know, religiously, like non-compliant, but like, I'm okay with, like, it's okay. I'm not going to pay attention to it right now. I'm going to sleep. But I think that younger consumers really want more control how they interact with the world around them and the content that they receive. But when you think about it, how much they engage, it's 90, even in school, they're on their, Chromebooks. There is no getting away from it. So I see that it is constant and ever present, and a droney push on them to engage digitally and be smart digitally. Even with this sort of the advent and the growth of AI, it's only getting more and more prevalent and more just for you. Mm-hmm. So if there's a moment, an opportunity to get out of that echo chamber of, like, you think about the social media universe has made, younger people less happy. The research suggests this, right? So when you think about the research of that's suggesting the happiness factor, of course they want to, like, maybe I need to put this down. Maybe a younger person in my office suggested I deleted TikTok, and I was like, it was brilliant. Once I deleted it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like free. Now, I did put it back on my phone, but I didn't highlight it. It's just somewhere on my phone, and it ends up being something that gives me that little space of that distance. I don't believe they're rejecting digital per se. I just think it's an overload situation and they need to find that balance. And because the pendulum is now was swinging so far in one direction, this is now the momentum is like, how do I have a physical experience in a retail store? How do I have a physical experience with my an experience with my friends that isn't around the phone? Gameplay. I've seen it now for the holiday season in particular, gameplay, like games that are like required, it's like, Pictionary and Twister, like it's coming back. Clue. I mean, it has zero to do with your phone and you have to focus or you lose. And I think it's kind of fascinating to see the momentum switching back that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if brands and marketers want to, maybe with some of the holiday catalogs or other types of direct mail, getting something tangible into the hands of Gen Z, is personalization important? Is it just anything tangible, getting it in front of them?
I personally, we didn't research the particular question, but I think personalization, as long as it's authentic, it's going to feel terrific. For me, if I receive I'm a YouTube TV subscriber, right? And I get ads. Yours all, yeah.
Yes, I am. Yep.
I get ads that are very specific. Like they are CMO. You should use this, ad buying metrics platform. And my wife, she's like, "Was that for you?" I'm like, "That was totally for me." But I guess the point is, it's better than a Pampers ad. You know what I mean? And I think that I am okay with my data being shared and that insight then going to people who are willing to bid for my attention. I'm okay with that. And I believe that, there was a time when we were all very uncomfortable with putting our credit cards into the computer. Now it's like this foregone conclusion. I don't believe that younger generations are remotely uncomfortable with personalization. I just think that the authenticity piece is the most important part. If suddenly you're saying a message to a Gen Zer, they will call you out if that has not been part of your brand ethos forever. And I think that is the piece that I think that brands need to be really careful about. Don't suddenly jump into a pond that you've never been in before and then announce something special that you're doing. It has to be authentic. But personalization for Gen Z, like if it has, I think something had my son's name on it and it came to the house. It's like, "This is my mail." And it was a small moment of celebration because it was mail for him. Now he's 18, so it's not that amazing anymore. But I still think there's a real sense of a different physical experience that happens when mail arrives at the house, like a small party. The Amazon box has a similar angle. Like it's not mail, it's potentially a present, and I think they branded it that way, and it feels like a moment when it arrives. So it has a lot of upside opportunity because it is something physical that's arriving at the house.
Right. So going back to the report.
Yeah.
We talked about, the 81% of Gen Z wanting to disconnect or wishing it was easier to disconnect. What are some other surprising findings from this report?
I was, because we focus a little on the holiday piece of this one. 74% of consumers say that in-store shopping is a way to spark the holiday spirit. I was like, that's funny. I didn't expect it to be like, listen, as a holiday, I actually purposefully go. I know it's crazy, but I purposefully go on Black Friday. I like to go. There's a spectacle of it, I believe. I think that's sort of, I'm into that.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
But also, I enjoy listening to Mariah Carey forcibly in every store, and I enjoy the feeling of magic that is potentially there, and it's all in that that special discovery find, right? And this is what we talked about in the research. It's really hard. I'll ask you this question just so you can answer it. How do you know what to watch on TV?
Well, I go a lot by what people tell me.
Right. You're using word of mouth, right?
Yeah, word of mouth.
If you go on Netflix without any logic of what you want to watch, you're just like scrolling for hours.
Watching trailer after trailer.
You're like, I don't know. And then it's an hour gone by. You're like, well, I watched 17 trailers, but didn't watch anything.
Yep.
back in my days, there was cable and you'd flip around the channels. Like, what do I want to watch? That is the definition of discovery. And there is no good discovery with digital, because if you're going on, you're tend to, I need a new t-shirt, and you're looking for t-shirts and not looking for like, oh, here's a great gift for my mother-in-law. I had no idea that was even a possibility. That's never going to happen accidentally in the digital space. But when you walk into a store and you're walking around and you're feeling that holiday spirit and, consume you, you're like, oh my God, my mother-in-law would just love this pair of crazy, socks, because that's fun and they're fluffy and she would love that. And I think that discovery is what, I think there's the magic in that. And there's a sort of a treasure hunty feeling that happens, like a TJ Maxx, Costco. You don't know why you're going, but I know I need something. And that's that magic that happens. And now in the holiday season, it's also an incremental add-on of like, and I feel like I'm feeling the holiday spirit. And I love that the research highlighted that, because in-store really does deliver that. And also the catalogs that arrive also start the feeling of that physical experience, because that brand is extended into your house, and even the magazines you might receive as well, that change that feeling for you. I think that the Gen Z and millennials both talk about this physical mail has prompted them to take a trip to the store. 78%. That was from the data. 78% of the actual people are inspired by what they receive to go to a brick and mortar store and have a potential shopping opportunity.
Printing United Alliance is the leading member-based printing and graphic arts association in North America, with over 70 years of history and more than 20,000 members worldwide. We're here to support printing professionals like you with the tools, resources, and information you need to grow your business, sharpen your skills, and expand your network. Whether you're a printer, supplier, student, or educator, we've built our community to serve everyone who's passionate about the future of print. An Alliance membership is a smart, cost-effective way to stay current on the latest trends, connect with industry leaders, and give your business the competitive edge it deserves. Head over to printing.org/membership to learn more about the memberships we offer. Let's move the printing industry forward together.
Wow, that is really, I mean, it's not surprising if you really think about it, but it is surprising.
It's totally logical. Like everything you're saying here, it's not like, oh my God, I'd never even considered this. No, we just quantified it.
But right, exactly.
The research, right?
Yeah, to actually see that and kind of confirm the way, at least the way I feel. I feel that way when I receive catalogs. So one of the things that the data kind of shows is that print and catalogs influence brand perception. You mentioned authenticity before, and that kind of that heightened authenticity, and Gen Z in particular looking for that authenticity. How does Quad interpret the significance of print in an omni-channel?
Well, as a full quaddie, almost 5 years in the job, it's so, I mean, listen, it's part of the mix, right? It has to be. So many brands, specifically the younger D2C brands, believe they can probably get away with Instagram ads and just have, it can be enough, right? And by the way, listen, you have to start somewhere, right? It's very difficult to jump into a print or a potentially more expensive media space without some significant belief. But our philosophical, the reason why Quad has sort of moved into what we call the marketing experience suite, the MX solution suite, is that we not only offer the primary deliverable, which is manufacturing via print and direct mail and catalogs, but also we have a whole data offering. We have a creative offering. We have we can do buying for you on on television. The truth is we've expanded our scope, but I'm afraid to use this word, but an omni-channel experience is what Quad believes is the best way to deliver it. And we actually measure, quantifiably measure which is the right lever to be pulling for this particular audience, for this brand. So it isn't necessarily like you got to do print or we're done. It's what quantity and what exposure vehicle is the best to help this audience move. And before this research, I would have been like, Gen Z, they don't care about print. Turns out, 71% talk about how print and catalogs are, they give them that heightened sense of that, oh, I understand this brand and their authentic voice. That metric tells me everything that I need to know. Like, any aged human being is like, wow, we all believe that when I touch something, that endowment effect, when I touch something, it makes me feel like I understand this brand better. Therefore, I'm willing to engage with it. I think that's the biggest message that I would say about Quad and what we believe. We are always going to try, as any good partner would, never shove you into any specific medium, but we love it to do it. But if it doesn't fit, you shouldn't do it.
So maybe let's expand on that a little bit.
Great.
So, looking at this research, how can brands kind of rethink their customer engagement strategies and moving forward into 2026?
So I believe the research is still 14 to 18 touches for your average consumer to engage with you. And I think that is, whether it's B2B or B2C, it's still the same quantity of touches. And that includes word of mouth and street teams and outdoor and every possible touch. The research, I guess in some case, it could be perceived as defensive. Like, by the way, touching things, tangibly engaging with your brand is important. And it's easy, given the world that we live in, how much digital has taken up so much of the oxygen in the room. And the reason we did the research was to highlight the value of balance and highlight the value of, you cannot just rely on one medium to drive the overwhelming quantity of engagement. Because, by the way, I don't know if you've looked at email recently, but it is a absolute, I don't even understand how I got on some of these lists I guess I signed up for it, I don't know, years ago. And it takes effort now to remove myself, right? So the new techniques are spamming me on my cell phone, which is even more rude. Mm-hmm. But I think what we're seeing here is the momentum of brands away from just purely the digital and trying to have a more balanced interaction that allows for those 14 to 18 touches to happen in all different ways. A little bit of paid media, a little bit of earned, a little bit of, on your own channels, an opportunity for word of mouth, something you might do with a live event. Experiential, for example, is having a wonderful moment because everyone is interested in having a brand experience that is in a physical space that you can take a picture of. Look, I'm in Grand Central and it smells different because Bed Bath & Beyond has done a smell-o-vision in Grand Central. I mean, that was amazing. Severance had a pop-up office in the center of Grand Central, one of the largest, commuting hubs in the country. It's like 800,000 people a day walking through there, and mostly on their way to the subway. But that's a cool idea. Mm-hmm. And think about, the team at Apple. They were like, we want to highlight what it was just like they were living. It was amazing, example of it, but they were taking an opportunity to bring you into the show by having the show live in a space that you have to walk through. Mm-hmm. That concept of experiential is, I think, it's continuing to grow. We're seeing that space happen and grow even more. But back to your question, I think brands really need to think about all of the potential different ways that they can engage with their target customer and not forget that there's so many other avenues that are potentially more expensive. But believe it or not, the reason they're more expensive is because they really, really work. Mm-hmm. When you look at the data of the response rate that someone gets on an email campaign versus, not that it's bad, email is still good, but versus a piece of direct mail, it is. I want to argue almost logarithmically different in the response rates. Banner ads are wonderful from a branding perspective, but they really do not provide that where you're going to engage. When you receive a catalog in your house and you're flipping through it for 15 or 20 minutes and you're like, oh, I love this couch. And you will leave it on your countertop for sometimes, weeks. All the Gen Z audience, we didn't have the specific, but it was a voiceover that I heard recently from someone. The Restoration Hardware catalog has the opportunity to live in your house for 2 to 3 months because people just love how it looks. Mm-hmm. And it's nice to look at. So the opportunity for brands to have the exposure and all the different, opportunities from a media perspective is an enormous opportunity. And I think that some brands might lean a little too heavily just into the digital.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, some of the things that you mentioned also have a digital component just naturally because of the way we are. So, with the Severance pop-up, yes, that was physical. And yes, 800,000 people are however many walked by it, but then it was also shared socially. So me in my living room in Philadelphia got to
You saw it.
experience it.
Right.
And that can be said also for great printed pieces, direct mail catalogs. When they're done well, packaging too. People share that on social media. People then go and do unboxing videos or show off their restoration hardware catalog that's almost like a lookbook, that you leave on your coffee table.
I totally agree. My nephews used to send me it was Amazon, may have been, it could be the Amazon, or it would have been actually Toys R Us, because they were a little, now they're old, but they used to send me circled pictures, and each of my nephews used to have different colors.
Yeah.
And sometimes things would get multiple stars. But that way of engaging, I think, is really, it does really make you think about the way we've all started to heavily lean into the things that we can easily measure. And measurement in digital, of course, it's part of the deal, right? But you can also measure pretty successfully with all the other things we can do from a medium perspective. And I think that is the piece that sometimes is overlooked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you mentioned, circling things in catalogs. For me, that's very nostalgic. I remember the Sears catalog coming to our house,
right?
And my sister and I would go through it, and we'd sit there furiously circling everything we wanted for
a rowing machine.
Yeah. Yeah. We had this joke, my sister would go through and circle all this stuff. And my mom would always say, she was sitting there basically saying, I don't know what it is, but I want it, just because you can see it in the catalog and it looks great and I want it. So yeah, there's almost that like nostalgic thing too in some of these holiday catalogs that you're getting, at least for me.
Well, I think everyone feels that feeling, right? You look at I remember back in the day, there was a Sharper Image catalog that would come, and it would inspire me to, like, I always loved the technology piece of it. And I just loved seeing, the way that they would organize the tech. Like, there was this sort of health tech, and there was wearable tech, and there was all these different things that inspired me to do my own television show called Golden's Gadgets back in the early days. But it was the originator of that was this inspiring, like, look at what the technology that is going to come was in the 80s. And it was so cool seeing, like, wow, I don't have to sort my own change. I can have this little bank that does it. It's so cool. That's the tangible piece that I think that we're swinging back to.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. So how do you think this research, being part of this research, helps Quad differentiate itself in the marketplace? And what maybe unique capabilities or offerings at Quad align with this return of touch trend?
So I think, as I mentioned earlier, like, Quad really does stand apart because it really does integrate digital and physical and data and technology all together with one company. And I think that the way that we can do that most successfully is because we started off with such a wonderful heritage in manufacturing and moved as clients needed. Hey, can you also do a little bit of digital for us? Can you also do TV for us? It was very logical for us. And the research, I think, in full transparency, allowed us to say, like, listen, we see the momentum going into these other areas, which, by the way, are growth areas for us, 100%. But we want to make certain that we're maintaining the intellectual ownership of an area that is so critical still for consumers, and even more importantly for Gen Z to own. And I think that is an area that I believe that why we do this research. And it's funny, I was talking to some of my colleagues, other marketing leaders, and they're like, wow, you really captured this sort of moment of zeitgeist that everyone's thinking about this topic of this pendulum swinging, and we wish we had done it first. So I'm like, oh, you didn't, so we got it. But it allows us to highlight all of the things that Quad does successfully, but puts a little more of an emphasis on the tangible, because we do direct mail, because we do catalogs, because we make the magazines, because we do everything that's connected to that. And then also, because we mail to so many people's houses, we have this extraordinary data set of people's passions. We know what you like. If we know what you receive at your house, we know what you're likely passionate about. That data set then allows us to inform all the other things that make the whole customer very visible to us and that household. So the research itself, it aligns very well with our beliefs of that the tangible matters, but it isn't, and it isn't, and let's not ignore the value of digital because it's extraordinarily important, but it should be balanced authentically with what your brand believes are the important goals it likes to achieve and which media channels we should do it in.
Do you plan to do this again, either with the Harris poll or do you plan to do follow-up research?
I can't imagine at this point. We've had such listen, I'd my 35th year being in marketing, and I mostly sat on the B2B side, and I've never had a piece of research that I've gotten such wild both consumer. I'm on a radio tomorrow in St. Louis because they're like, can we talk about this? Because it's specifically the Gen Z portion of it is something they're really interested in. Like, so this is digital detox and letting go of the phone and that interest in the holiday spirit, being motivated by something, being going into the store experiences, all those metrics like bing, bing, bing. So the consumer press has found this fascinating. And business press, obviously, it works to tell our story, but I cannot see it stopping. So we continue to do a pulse at least once, a big piece of the next push. So this one was about the holiday season. So the specific holiday pulse. Next year, I'm not sure what it's going to be about, but we're going to focus on something that's really valuable. The next area for us that will be just exactly pitch perfect for what it needs to be. So we should expect about every 6 months another tangible push on this particular agenda item because it's creating I think a nice momentum for the brand.
So obviously we've talked a lot about Gen Z and the interest that lies there, but what about Gen Alpha? Because they're coming up.
They're coming up, right?
Yeah, I don't know the exact ages, but they're going to be.
I think they're younger than like 16 or 15.
Okay,
they're
so a couple years,
but their bullseye is more like 12 and 13-year-olds. It's funny. I haven't done a tremendous amount of research to guide, my insight here, but I think it's funny. It's hard to think about Gen Z being the elderly people in the room, but the Gen Alphas, they are so digitally native. They will have AI from the beginning of their school existence. It will be a really interesting thing to seeing how those younger people balance the kind of the physical and the digital. I believe that there will be a little bit more of an educated perspective from the millennial parents with their Gen Alpha kids. Maybe the cell phone will be delayed, and that probably wouldn't be the worst idea ever, because it really does have a sort of an impact on overall happiness and anxiety. So I think that we will maybe see a little I think Gen Z might be the most digitized audience, where Gen Alpha might back off of it a bit. Like, go outside and get some dirt under your fingernails and do that, but have it extend longer. That would be I'm an old person, so I think that would be my hope.
No, that's great. So what would you advise, marketers to prioritize now if they want to tap into some of the insights in this report, heading into this holiday season, but also, upcoming holiday season.
Yeah, of course. And frankly, for any year, anytime this research happens to sort of focus on, it doesn't matter whether it's holiday season or not. This is relevant. I think, if the research is available, so it's on our site, you can easily access it. It's return of touch. It's easy to find. The value, I think I think we hit on it, but I'll reiterate it. The 2 or 3 points that I think are really important to me is that there is an overall, what is the most authentic, way your brand communicates? How do you make certain that you are staying authentic to your brand? 1, 2, how do you make certain that you have a good mix of how you're communicating to your end consumer? Because if you are focused on too heavily on one channel or another, you will easily potentially miss a large swath of audience that you could potentially be growing your business quite substantially. And I think the last piece for me is that recognizing there's still tremendous opportunity in things that we all think may have passed their prime. We thought radio was over, and suddenly here we are doing a podcast, which is as close as you can get to radio without calling it radio, right? We just changed the word. So now when you think about the value of the printed vehicle and having something tangibly that you can engage, and you see the endowment effect, the value of physically touching something is wildly more important than glass, on a digital screen. It is an overwhelming impact, an outsized impact that brand marketers and brands need to think about that value. Authentically communicating to that audience in a way that they can get that 14 to 18 touches in a way that they will really receive. I think that's what it's going to be, and that's how I would suggest to brand marketers just to consider.
Okay, great. And I feel like you wrapped up kind of the messages pretty well. But if you had one last thing to say, one key message from the research for everyone who's listening, what would it be?
Wow, that's a good question. I think that I would say it's so easy to dismiss something that you feel is nostalgic as like, oh, that's the old way of doing it. And the reason why engaging with something tangibly is so powerful is because we're all human beings, and you cannot forget that you're marketing to human beings. And when we were living on the savannah and having a moment where we're, sort of the sunshine was on our face, there was a moment of real joy and enjoyment that could happen, and engaging with other people. There was, around the campfire, if you will. And I believe that we may have lost a little bit of that thread, that we believe that we can deliver so much of communication via digital devices. And we may have started to overlook the value of the fact that I'm in fact engaging with humans, and humans love to experience things physically with all of their senses. And so many times the way that brand marketers are engaging might be just using a few, specifically if it's only in digital, but the opportunity to do things physical and to physically engage with your consumer in a way that's engaging all their senses is probably the most important part of this research, which is, I think, the Uber message, which is, yes, there's a value of touching it, a piece, there you can touch and engage something, but there's also the bigger value of that you're engaging all that human beings' input devices. And that's what I think the message should be for the research.
Thank you so much. So, could you plug Quad's website? And
yeah, of course, I will plug it.
Okay.
So we have the research on the site at quad.com, QUAD.com, and it is featured prominently. I believe there will be. I'm checking on the site myself just to make sure I have the right URL. It's featured on the top of the page. But so I would say quad.com, and then it's right there on the top. If you search for it's featured on the top section of the Return on Touch research.
Perfect. And I will include a link to it below in the description for everyone who's interested. Josh, thank you so much. This has been enlightening and loved talking about the research with you.
Ashley, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for reaching out. I just am so thrilled that you connected this as well. I'm really thrilled to have had the chance to talk with you about it.
I want to thank Josh for joining me on today's episode and for sharing some of the insights into the report. I will link to it in the description. I also want to thank all of you, our listeners. Stay tuned for the next episode of the Impressions Exchange podcast.